A single mother sacrifices everything to save her daughter, even dancing for strangers at a nightclub. But when a millionaire sees her true talent, his offer could change both their lives forever. Will love and determination be enough to overcome the odds? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Ellen Davenport walked into her small apartment, her feet aching after another double shift. The clock on the wall showed 11:30 p.m. She found Mrs. Rodriguez, her elderly neighbor, dozing on the couch. Little Lily was fast asleep in her room, surrounded by her stuffed animals. "Thank you for watching her again," Ellen whispered, pulling out some crumpled bills from her wallet. Mrs. Rodriguez waved them away like always, but Ellen insisted. She couldn't keep accepting favors, not when everyone else in her life wanted payment up front. After Mrs. Rodriguez left, Ellen went to check on Lily. Her beautiful 6-year-old daughter was burning up with fever again. This was the 3rd time this week. Ellen's heart sank as she touched Lily's forehead. Something wasn't right and she knew it. "Mommy?" Lily's eyes fluttered open. "My tummy hurts." "I know, baby. We're going to see the doctor tomorrow." Ellen crawled into bed next to her daughter, holding her close. She'd been saving up for weeks to afford this doctor's visit. The free clinic had told her they couldn't help anymore. Lily needed a specialist. The next morning, Ellen called in sick at the diner where she worked. She couldn't risk losing another waitressing job. But Lily came first. She always came first. The doctor's office was cold and sterile. Ellen filled out paperwork while Lily colored in an old magazine. When the nurse called them in, Ellen's hands were shaking. The doctor, a gray-haired man named Dr. Patterson, examined Lily carefully. His face got more serious with each test. "Miss Davenport, we need to run some blood work," he said, "and I want to schedule an MRI." Ellen's throat went dry. "How much will that cost?" Dr. Patterson looked uncomfortable. "Your insurance?" "I don't have any," Ellen admitted. "I lost it when the restaurant chain I worked for closed down." The doctor sighed. "These tests are necessary, Ms. Davenport. Your daughter is showing symptoms that concern me greatly." Ellen looked at Lily, who was now sleeping on the examination table, exhausted from the simple checkup. "I'll figure something out," she said. She always did. The next few weeks turned into a nightmare. Ellen picked up extra cleaning jobs at night after her shifts at the diner. She cleaned offices, houses, anywhere that would pay her under the table. The tests came back, and the results were worse than she'd imagined. "It's a rare condition," Dr. Patterson explained. "Your daughter needs immediate treatment. Without it—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Ellen sat in the hospital billing office, staring at numbers that made her head spin. The woman behind the desk spoke in a monotone voice about payment plans and financial assistance, but all Ellen could think about was Lily's pale face, getting paler each day. "Please," Ellen begged. "She's all I have." "I'm sorry, Ms. Davenport. Without insurance or a substantial down payment, we can't begin the treatment protocol." That night, Ellen held Lily as she slept, tears rolling down her face. The pile of medical bills on her kitchen table seemed to mock her. She'd already pawned her grandmother's jewelry, sold her car, and picked up every extra shift she could find. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. "Mommy," Lily mumbled in her sleep. "Don't cry." Ellen wiped her eyes quickly. Even in her sleep, Lily was trying to be strong for her, just like she'd been strong through every blood test, every examination, every night of pain. While cleaning an office building downtown the next evening, Ellen found a flyer that had fallen behind a trash can. "Lux nightclub, high-paying opportunities for dancers, experience preferred." The paper trembled in her hands. She'd studied dance all through high school, even got a scholarship to a small arts college before getting pregnant with Lily. She'd given up that dream without regret. Lily was worth everything, but now maybe that old dream could save her daughter's life. Ellen stared at her reflection in the window of the office building. She was still in good shape from all the physical work, still remembered how to move. The thought of dancing in a club made her stomach turn, but when she thought of Lily lying in that hospital bed, her resolve hardened. "I'll do anything," she whispered to her reflection. "Anything for her." She folded the flyer and put it in her pocket. Tomorrow she would go to the club. Tomorrow she would swallow her pride. Tomorrow she would find a way to save her daughter, because that's what mothers do. They find a way no matter what it costs them. Even if it means dancing in the dark for strangers, even if it means giving up the last pieces of the life she thought she'd have. For Lily, she would do it all. Ellen went home that night, tucked Lily into bed and practiced her old dance moves in the tiny living room. Her body remembered more than she expected. As she moved in the darkness, tears streaming down her face, she made a promise to herself and to Lily. This wouldn't break her. This wouldn't destroy them. This was just another test, another challenge to overcome, and she would overcome it, just like she'd overcome everything else life had thrown at her, because Lily deserved to live. Lily deserved to laugh and play, and grow up. And if dancing at the Lux nightclub was the way to make that happen, then Ellen would dance her heart out. She just prayed it would be enough. The Lux nightclub looked different in daylight. Ellen stood outside, clutching her old dance bag, trying to gather her courage. The neon signs were dark, and the windows were tinted black. A sign on the door read, "Auditions 2 to 5 p.m." Mrs. Rodriguez had agreed to pick Lily up from school today. Ellen had told her she was interviewing for a night cleaning job. The lie tasted bitter in her mouth, but she couldn't tell anyone the truth. Not about this. Inside, the club smelled of stale smoke and cheap perfume. A few other women sat in. The dimly lit room, all of them younger than Ellen, all of them looking nervous. A tall woman with red hair walked out from behind a beaded curtain. "I'm Regina," she said, looking them over. "I manage the dancers. Who's first?" Nobody moved. Ellen took a deep breath and stood up. "I am." Regina led her to a dressing room with a scratched mirror and flickering lights. "Change into your dance. Clothes. Stage is through there. Show me what you've got." Ellen's hands shook as she changed into her black leotard and dance shorts. They were old from her college days, but they still fit. She looked at herself in the mirror and thought of Lily, the hospital bills, the treatments her baby needed. The stage was bigger than she expected. Poles were set up at regular intervals and Ellen's stomach churned. But Regina spoke up before she could panic. "We do artistic performances here, honey. This isn't some sleazy joint. Mr. Jonas, our main patron, he likes real dance. Show me your ballet training, your modern dance, whatever you've got. Just make it beautiful." Ellen nodded, relief flooding through her. She could do this. She'd trained for years before life took her in a different direction. The music started, something classical with a modern beat mixed in, and Ellen danced. She poured everything into her movements. Her fear for Lily, her desperation, her love. Her body remembered more than she'd hoped, flowing through positions she hadn't attempted in years. When she finished, she was breathing hard, but Regina was smiling. Well, Regina said, "You're different. You've got real training. And something else, something that makes people want to watch you. What's your name?" "Ellen. Ellen Davenport." "You're hired. Can you start tonight?" Ellen's heart jumped. "Tonight? Mr. Jonas will be here. He's been looking for someone special for his new showcase performances. They pay very well." Regina paused. "Very, very well." Ellen thought of the hospital administrator's cold face, of Lily's medical bills. "I'll be here." That night, Ellen watched the other dancers from backstage. They were talented, moving with grace and skill. This really wasn't what she'd feared. The customers sat at tables watching respectfully. No touching allowed, no private dances, just art and beauty and music. "Mr. Jonas is here," Regina whispered, pointing to a private booth in the back. "He's the one who keeps this place running, likes to find new talent. If he likes you—" She left the sentence hanging. Ellen peered through the curtain. Mark Jonas sat in shadows, but she could see he was younger than she'd expected, maybe mid-30s. Handsome in an expensive suit, he watched the performances with intense focus, like a man at the ballet. "You're up next," Regina said. "Remember, dance like you did this afternoon. Dance like you mean it." Ellen walked onto the stage in a simple black costume. The lights were bright enough that she could barely see the audience. The music began, the same piece from her audition. She closed her eyes for a moment, thought of Lily, and began to move. She forgot about the club, forgot about the customers, forgot about everything except the story she was telling through her dance. A story of love and sacrifice, of hope and desperation. Her body spoke what her heart couldn't say in words. When she finished, there was actual applause, real applause, not just polite customer noise. Regina was beaming backstage. "Mr. Jonas wants to meet you," she said. "He never asks to meet new dancers on their first night." "Never." Ellen felt dizzy. "I can't. I have to get home to my daughter." Regina grabbed her arm. "Listen to me. This could change everything for you. 5 minutes. Give him 5 minutes." Ellen thought of Lily again, of the treatments she couldn't afford. "Okay, 5 minutes. Mark Jonas's private booth was elegant, set apart from the main floor. He stood when Ellen approached, and she was struck by his eyes. Kind eyes, not at all what she'd expected. "Your performance was extraordinary," he said, his voice soft but confident. "Please sit. Would you like some water?" Ellen sat carefully, keeping space between them. "Thank you. You have formal training." "Yes, a long time ago." "But you—" "Stopped." "Why?" Ellen hesitated. Life had other plans. Mark studied her face. "You're dancing for something, or someone. I can see it in every movement." Ellen's eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. She stood quickly. "I'm sorry, I need to go. My daughter—" "Wait." Mark held out a business card. "I'm looking for dancers for a special project. Much better pay than the regular shows. Legitimate artistic performances at proper venues. Real dance, the kind you trained for. Please consider it." Ellen stared at the card. The pay rate he quoted made her heart stop. That kind of money could cover Lily's treatments, all of them. "Think about it," Mark said gently. "Call me tomorrow if you're interested." Ellen walked home that night, the business card burning a hole in her pocket. Her feet ached, her muscles screamed, but her mind was racing. This could be it. The answer to her prayers, coming from the most unexpected place. When she got home, Mrs. Rodriguez was dozing in the chair again. "How was the interview?" she asked sleepily. "Good," Ellen said, "really good." She went to check on Lily, who was running a fever again. As she held her daughter close, feeling the heat from her small body, Ellen made her decision. She would call Mark Jonas tomorrow. She would dance in his showcase. She would do whatever it took, because now she had hope. Real hope, and she wouldn't let it slip away. Ellen stared at Mark Jonas's business card the next morning after Lily left for school. Her fingers trembled as she dialed the number. It rang twice before his warm voice answered. "Mark Jonas speaking. This is Ellen Davenport from the club last night." "Ellen, yes, I'm glad you called. Can you meet me at my office today? We can discuss the showcase properly." Ellen thought of her shift at the diner. "I work days." "I understand. How about during your lunch break? My driver can pick you up." An hour later, Ellen stood in front of Joe's diner watching a sleek black car pull up. The driver opened the door for her, and she slid into the cool leather seats, feeling completely out of place in her waitress uniform. Mark's office was in a glass tower downtown. His secretary, an older woman named Barbara, smiled warmly and led Ellen straight in. The office was huge, with windows overlooking the city. "Thank you for coming," Mark said, standing to greet her. "Please sit." Ellen sat stiffly on the edge of a leather chair. "I can't stay long, my lunch break." "Of course." Mark sat across from her. "Let me be direct. I'm producing a dance showcase at the Hamilton Theatre. Professional dancers, proper, stage real artistic performances. The pay is $5,000 per week during the 6-week run." Ellen's heart stopped. That kind of money would cover Lily's treatments, and then some. "Why me? I haven't danced professionally in years." "Because you have something rare. When you dance, you make people feel something. That's not technique, that's gift." He paused. "But I sense you're dancing for a reason. Would you tell me why?" Ellen didn't know why, but she found herself telling him everything. About Lily's illness, the mounting medical bills, the hospitals turning them away. By the end, she was crying, something she never did in front of strangers. Mark handed her a tissue. "I want to help, not just with the showcase. I have connections at Memorial Hospital. The best children's unit in the state. Let me make some calls." "Why would you do that?" Ellen asked suspiciously. "You don't know us." "Because I believe in fate, Ellen. I've been searching for a dancer who could capture the essence of what dance means to me. Last night I found her. Let me help you, and you help me create something beautiful." Ellen thought of Lily, getting weaker each day. "Okay." Things moved quickly after that. Mark made calls. By that afternoon, Lily had an appointment at Memorial Hospital for the next day. Ellen couldn't believe it was happening. "Mommy, this hospital is fancy," Lily said as they walked through Memorial's bright halls. The walls were painted with cheerful murals, and there was a playroom filled with toys. Dr. Sarah Chen, the specialist Mark had recommended, was nothing like the other doctors they'd seen. She spent an hour with Lily, talking and playing while she examined her. Then she sat down with Ellen. "Your daughter's condition is serious but treatable," she said. "We need to start right away, but I've seen many children recover fully from this." Ellen braced herself. "The cost?" "Mr. Jonas has arranged everything. His foundation often helps families in need." Ellen felt dizzy. His foundation? The Jonas Family Foundation? They cover medical care for children whose families can't afford it. Didn't he tell you? He hadn't. Ellen realized there was a lot she didn't know about Mark Jonas. That evening at the first showcase rehearsal, Ellen arrived early. She found Mark in the theater, watching the stage being set up. "You didn't tell me about your foundation," she said. Mark turned, looking slightly embarrassed. "I didn't want you to think I was trying to impress you. Why are you really helping us?" He was quiet for a moment. 6 years ago, I saw a performance in Istanbul that changed my life. A dancer told a story of loss and hope through her movements. I've been searching for that same magic ever since." He looked at her. "When you danced, I saw it again. Pure emotion turned into art. I want to share that with the world." "And Lily? Why help her?" "Because I lost my little sister to cancer when I was 12. My family had money, the best doctors, but it wasn't enough. When I saw the way you looked at your daughter..." He stopped, his voice thick with emotion. "Every child deserves a chance, Ellen. Every mother deserves the chance to save her child." Ellen felt tears in her eyes again. This seemed too good to be true. But Lily's appointment had been real. The treatment plan was real. For the first time in months, she had real hope. The other dancers began arriving for rehearsal. They were professionals but kind, welcoming Ellen into their group. As they began to dance, Ellen felt something she hadn't felt in years: joy. But not everyone was happy about the new arrangement. Regina from the club watched rehearsal with narrowed eyes, and in his office across town, Richard Jonas, Mark's father, looked at a report on his desk. "A dancer from that club?" he said to his assistant. "With a sick child? This has Gold Digger written all over it. Find out everything about this, Ellen." "Davenport, everything." Meanwhile, Ellen picked Lily up from Mrs. Rodriguez. Her daughter was smiling, holding a new stuffed bear from the hospital gift shop. "Dr. Chen said I'm going to get better, Mummy," Lily said. "She promised." Ellen hugged her daughter close, breathing in her sweet scent. Things were finally looking up, but a lifetime of hard knocks had taught her that nothing good came without a price. She just prayed she was strong enough to pay whatever this one turned out to be, because for the first time in years, she had more than just hope. She had a chance, a real chance for Lily, for herself, maybe even for happiness, and she would fight with everything she had to hold on to it. Richard Jonas sat in his mahogany-paneled office, reviewing the report on Ellen Davenport. His face grew darker with each page he read. "A waitress," he muttered, "a cleaning woman, and now she's got her hooks in my son." His assistant, James, stood nervously nearby. "There's more, sir. She's behind on her rent, has multiple overdue medical bills, and her daughter's condition will require expensive long-term treatment." "Of course it will." Richard slammed the folder shut. "And my soft-hearted fool of a son is paying for all of it. Get me a meeting with Memorial Hospital's board of directors, now." Across town, Ellen was in rehearsal with the other dancers. The showcase was taking shape, and even the professional dancers admitted she was keeping up. Mark watched from the theater seats, a small smile on his face. "Take 5, everyone," the choreographer called. Ellen grabbed her water bottle and sat on the edge of the stage. Mark walked up to join her. "You're doing amazingly well," he said. "It feels good," Ellen admitted, "like coming home after being away too long." "Listen, I was wondering..." Mark looked nervous, which was new. "Would you and Lily like to have dinner with me tonight? Nothing fancy, just..." "Mark!" A sharp voice cut through the theater. Richard Jonas strode down the aisle, his expensive shoes clicking on the floor. "We need to talk. Now." Ellen had never seen Mark's face change so quickly. The warmth vanished, replaced by a tight, controlled expression. "Father, I'm in the middle of rehearsal." "Yes, I can see that." Richard's eyes raked over Ellen with cold disdain. "The showcase, your latest project." Mark stood up straighter. "Ellen, would you excuse us?" Ellen nodded and hurried backstage, but she could still hear their voices rising. "This is embarrassing, Mark. A dancer from that club. The board members are talking. Our investors are concerned. The showcase will make money, Father. Ellen is talented." "This isn't about talent. It's about reputation, about family name, and that woman's daughter." "Don't." Mark's voice turned to steel. "Don't you dare bring Lily into this." Ellen's hands shook as she gathered her things. She needed to pick up Lily from her treatment session anyway. These past few weeks had been like a dream. Lily responding to the medications, the showcase coming together, Mark's kindness. She should have known it was too good to last. At Memorial Hospital, Ellen found Lily in the children's playroom after her treatment. Her daughter was teaching another sick little girl how to draw butterflies. "Mommy!" Lily ran to her. "Look, what Dr. Chen gave me." She held up a certificate. "For being brave during my treatment." Ellen hugged her tight. "That's wonderful, baby. Ready to go home." "Miss Davenport?" A nurse approached them. "Could you stop by administration before you leave? They need to discuss something about the payment arrangements." Ellen's heart sank. In the office, a stern-faced woman sat behind a large desk. "There seems to be some confusion about the Jonas Foundation's involvement in your daughter's case," she said. "We've been instructed to review all special arrangements." "But Lily's treatment—" Ellen's voice shook. "She can't stop now. She's getting better. Perhaps you should discuss this with Mr. Jonas, both Mr. Jonases." Ellen felt sick. She knew Richard Jonas was behind this. On the bus ride home, she held Lily close, fighting back tears. That evening, her phone rang. It was Mark. "Ellen, I'm so sorry about today, about my father, about the hospital. I'm fixing it, I promise." "Maybe he's right," Ellen said softly. "Maybe I'm causing too much trouble." "No." Mark's voice was firm. "Listen to me. Meet me for coffee tomorrow morning. Please, let me explain everything." Ellen agreed, but her dreams that night were troubled. She remembered all too well what it was like to have everything fall apart. The next morning, she dropped Lily at school and met Mark at a small coffee shop. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept. "My father is a proud man," he said. "When my sister died, something in him broke. He turned cold, focused only on business, on the family name. But he doesn't control the foundation. I do, and he doesn't control me. I don't want to cause problems between you and your family." "Ellen," Mark reached across the table, taking her hand. "You and Lily, you've brought something back to my life. Something I thought I'd lost. Hope, joy, the beauty of dance. I won't let my father destroy that." Ellen looked at their joined hands. "I'm scared, Mark. Lily's finally getting better. I can't risk her treatment." "Trust me," Mark said. "Please. I know my father seems powerful, but I'm not the same young man who used to bow to his every demand. I've grown up, and I'll fight for what matters." His phone buzzed. Another angry message from his father. Mark ignored it. "Have dinner with me tonight," he said. "You and Lily, let me show you both that not everything good has to end." Ellen hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but somewhere simple. Lily loves pizza." Mark's face lit up. "Pizza it is." Neither of them noticed Regina from the club watching through the coffee shop window, taking pictures with her phone. And neither of them knew that Richard Jonas had hired her to keep tabs on them. "Got what you wanted?" Regina texted, sending the photos. They looked pretty cozy. Richard Jonas looked at the pictures and smiled coldly. "Perfect. Time to show my son what kind of woman he's really dealing with." But even as dark clouds gathered, Ellen felt something warm growing in her heart. Because when Mark held her hand, when he looked at her with those kind eyes, she felt something she'd never expected to feel again. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't in this fight alone anymore. The pizza place was small and cozy, with red checkered tablecloths and pictures of Italy on the walls. Lily's eyes lit up when she saw the arcade games in the corner. "Can I play, Mommy? Please?" She was looking better these days, with more color in her cheeks. Mark pulled out a handful of quarters. "Here you go, sweetheart, have fun." Ellen watched her daughter skip off to the games. "You're good with her." "She makes it easy," Mark said. "She reminds me of my sister, that same spark of joy, even when things are tough." They ordered a large pepperoni pizza and watched Lily play skee-ball. For a moment, they felt like a normal family, but their peace was about to be shattered. Richard Jonas walked in, followed by Regina from the club. Ellen's stomach dropped. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Richard said loudly. "My son playing house with a stripper." Several customers turned to stare. Mark stood up quickly. "Father, stop this now." "No, you stop this ridiculous infatuation." Richard pulled out an envelope. "Regina here has been kind enough to share some interesting information about your new friend." Regina wouldn't meet Ellen's eyes. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Jonas pays better than the club." Richard threw photos on the table. Ellen dancing at the club. Ellen talking to customers. All taken from angles that made innocent moments look suspicious. "Is this the kind of woman you want associated with our family name?" Richard demanded. "A woman who takes her clothes off for money?" "It wasn't like that," Ellen said, her voice shaking. "I never—" "Mommy!" Lily had come back, clutching her skee-ball tickets. "Why is everyone yelling?" Mark moved quickly, stepping between Lily and his father. "Hey, sweetheart, why don't we go get your prize from the arcade? Those tickets look like enough for something special." As Mark led Lily away, Ellen faced Richard. I danced to save my daughter's life, that's all. I never did anything wrong. Save your excuses, Richard sneered. I've already spoken to the hospital board. They're very concerned about funding experimental treatments for someone with your background. Ellen felt like she'd been slapped. You can't do that. Lily's getting better. I can do anything I want. I built that hospital wing. Who do you think they'll listen to? A cleaning woman or me? Ellen gathered her things with trembling hands. Tell Mark I'm sorry. Tell him thank you for everything. She rushed to where Mark was helping Lily pick out a stuffed animal. Baby, we have to go. But Mommy, Mr. Mark was going to show me how to win the big prize. Now, Lily, Ellen's voice broke. Please. Mark saw the tears in her eyes. Ellen, wait. Don't let him do this. I can't risk Lily's treatment. I can't. She grabbed Lily's hand. I'm sorry. They nearly ran from the pizza place. Behind them, they could hear Mark and his father arguing loudly. At home, Ellen put Lily to bed and finally let herself cry. Her phone kept ringing, Mark calling over and over, but she couldn't answer. Everything was falling apart. The next morning, she called the hospital to confirm Lily's next treatment. The receptionist's voice was cold. I'm sorry, but there seem to be some issues with your payment arrangements. We'll need to postpone treatment until they're resolved. Ellen hung up and slid to the floor, her legs too weak to hold her. How could she tell Lily? How could she watch her baby get sick again? Her phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Please don't give up. I'm fighting for you both, trust me. But an hour later, another message came. This one from Richard Jonas himself. If you care about your daughter, you'll stay away from my son. End this now, or I'll make sure no hospital in this state will treat her. Ellen looked at the two messages, her heart breaking. She loved Mark. The realization hit her suddenly. Somewhere between his kindness and his smile, between the way he treated Lily and the way he believed in her dancing, she'd fallen in love. But love wasn't enough, not when Lily's life hung in the balance. She called the showcase director and quit. Then she blocked Mark's number, her fingers shaking as she did it. Finally, she called Regina at the club. Is my old slot still open? She asked, her voice hollow. You want to come back? What about the fancy showcase? The showcase is over. I need the money, please. Regina was quiet for a moment. Yeah, your slot's open. But Ellen, I'm sorry about the pictures. I didn't know he'd use them like that. It doesn't matter now. Nothing matters except keeping my daughter alive. That night, Ellen danced at the club again, but this time there was no art in her movements, no joy. She moved mechanically, each step weighted with despair. In the dressing room, she heard the other dancers whispering. Mark Jonas had been there earlier looking for her. His father had cut him off completely, frozen his accounts. He'd refused to give in to his father's demands. Ellen's heart ached, but she couldn't think about Mark now. She had to focus on survival, on Lily, on finding another way to pay for the treatments. But when she got home that night, she found an envelope had been slipped under her door. Inside was a check from the Jonas Family Foundation, signed by Mark, with a note. Father doesn't control all the foundation's accounts. I told you I'd fight. For you? Don't give up on us, please. Ellen held the check, tears falling onto the paper. The amount would cover months of Lily's treatments. But using it would mean going against Richard Jonas. It would mean letting Mark fight his father, maybe lose his family. How could she ask that of him? How could she not, when Lily's life was at stake? Outside her window, thunder rumbled. A storm was coming. Ellen just didn't know if she was strong enough to weather it. Ellen stared at the check all night, unable to sleep. By morning, she still didn't know what to do. Lily woke up with a fever again. I don't feel good, Mommy, she whimpered. Ellen held her daughter close, feeling the heat from her small body. Without the treatments, Lily would only get worse. The doctor had been clear about that. A knock at the door made her jump. When she opened it, Barbara, Mark's secretary, stood there. Ms. Davenport, Barbara said quietly, I know it's early, but this couldn't wait. She handed Ellen an envelope. Everything that's happening, it isn't right. I've worked for the Jonas family for 20 years. I've never seen Mark fight his father like this. Inside the envelope were documents, bank statements, foundation records, board meeting minutes. Ellen's hands trembled as she read them. Richard Jonas has been using the foundation's money for his own projects, Barbara explained. Mark found out months ago. That's why he took control of some of the accounts. He's been trying to fix things quietly, but now he's using it against his father, Ellen finished. To help us, Barbara nodded. Mark is meeting with the hospital board this morning. His father may be powerful, but he's not above the law. Mark has proof of everything. After Barbara left, Ellen made a decision. She called Mrs. Rodriguez to watch Lily and took a taxi to Memorial Hospital. She found Mark in the lobby, looking tired but determined. "Ellen!" His face lit up when he saw her. "I've been trying to reach you. I know, I'm sorry, I was scared. The board meeting is in 10 minutes. Come with me. Let them see who they're really helping." Ellen shook her head. "No, you need to stop." "What?" "This fight with your father, using the foundation documents against him. Stop it." Mark stared at her. "Ellen, he's wrong. What he's doing is wrong. With these documents, we can destroy your family," Ellen said softly. "Ruin your father. Maybe even send him to jail. Is that what you want? He's trying to let your daughter die. And I'll fight him, but not like this." Ellen touched Mark's face gently. "You're not like him. Don't let him turn you into someone who hurts family, no matter how right the reason." Tears filled Mark's eyes. "Then how do we fight him?" "We show him he's wrong about me, about us." Ellen squared her shoulders. "I'm going to dance." "What?" "The showcase. I'm going to make it so brilliant, so beautiful, that even your father can't ignore it. And I'm going to prove I'm not what he thinks I am." Mark looked at her with wonder. "The showcase is in 2 weeks. Without you, it's fallen apart. Then we'll put it back together, but first..." Ellen pulled out the foundation check he'd sent. "We do this right. No secrets, no schemes. I'll find another way to pay for Lily's treatments." "Ellen, the treatments..." "Can't wait." "I know," she took a deep breath. "That's why I'm going to talk to your father." "He won't listen." "Maybe not. But I have to try. For Lily. For you. For all of us." Ellen found Richard Jonas in his office. His secretary tried to stop her, but Ellen walked right past her. "How dare you come here?" Richard started to say. "I'm not leaving until you hear me out," Ellen interrupted. "You can call security if you want, but first look at this." She placed a worn photo album on his desk. Inside were pictures of her dancing as a teenager, newspaper clippings about her scholarships, her acceptance letter to the dance academy. "I had dreams once," she said quietly, "but when I got pregnant with Lily, I chose to be a mother instead. I don't regret it. Every sacrifice was worth it for her, just like every sacrifice you made was for your family." Richard's face tightened. "You don't know anything about my family. I know about Rachel." His head snapped up at his daughters. "Nanette, Mark told me how you fought for her, how you tried everything to save her. You did what any parent would do. Stop it. That's all I'm doing, fighting for my child, just like you did. By seducing my son, using him for his money? No, by working every job I could find, by cleaning toilets and serving coffee, and yes, by dancing, because that's what parents do. We do whatever it takes to save our children." Ellen pulled out the foundation check Mark had sent. She ripped it in half. "I don't want your money," she said. "I don't want your son's money. I want a chance to earn it. Let me dance in the showcase. Judge me on my talent, not your prejudices. And please, please don't punish my daughter for your anger at me." Richard stared at the torn check for a long moment. Finally, he looked up at Ellen. "The showcase," he said slowly. If it fails, if you embarrass this family, I won't." He pressed a button on his phone. "Barbara, call Memorial. Tell them to resume the girl's treatments. Regular billing." Ellen's knees went weak with relief. "This changes nothing," Richard warned. "You still have to prove yourself." "I understand." Ellen turned to leave, then stopped. "Mr. Jonas?" "Thank you." Outside his office, she found Mark waiting. "I heard..." "Everything," he said, pulling her into his arms. "You're the bravest person I've ever known." Ellen let herself lean on him for just a moment. "The showcase has to be perfect." "It will be. We'll make it perfect together." But as they headed to the theater for rehearsal, neither of them saw Richard Jonas watching from his window. His face was unreadable as he picked up the torn pieces of the check. "Well, Miss Davenport," he murmured, "let's see what you're really made of." With only 2 weeks until the showcase, the theater buzzed with nervous energy. Ellen danced until her feet bled, then bandaged them and danced some more. The other dancers watched her with growing respect. "She's incredible," one whispered. To another, "No wonder Mark Jonas fell for her." But not everyone was supportive. Regina from the club showed up at rehearsal one day, walking straight up to Ellen. "Richard Jonas asked me to give you a message," she said. "He says to remember what happened at the pizza place. He says he has more photos." Ellen kept stretching, not looking up. Tell Mr. Jonas I'm not afraid anymore. Tell him to bring his photos to the showcase. Let everyone see what a mother will do for her child." Regina shifted uncomfortably. "Ellen, I really am sorry about before. I didn't know—" "You took money to hurt me and my daughter," Ellen said quietly. "Don't pretend you care now." After Regina left, Mark found Ellen crying in the dressing room. "We don't have to do this," he said, holding her. "We could leave. Start fresh somewhere else." Ellen wiped her eyes. "No, running won't solve anything. Your father needs to learn he can't bully people into doing what he wants. And I need to show Lily that we don't give up, no matter how hard things get." The next day, Dr. Chen called with news about Lily's latest test results. "The treatments are working better than we expected," she said. "Her numbers are improving dramatically." Ellen clutched the phone, tears of joy running down her face. "Really? Really? Whatever you're doing, Ms. Davenport, keep doing it. Your daughter is fighting hard." That evening at rehearsal, Ellen danced with new energy. Her solo piece, the one she'd created about her journey with Lily, moved the entire company to tears. "That's it," the choreographer said softly. "That's what we've been waiting for." Mark watched from the wings, his heart full. When Ellen finished, he pulled her aside. "Move in with me," he said suddenly. "What? You and Lily? Your apartment is too small, the neighborhood isn't safe, and I want to wake up every morning knowing you're both okay." Ellen touched his face gently. "Mark, your father—" "I don't care what he thinks. Not anymore." He took her hands in his. "These past weeks, watching you fight for everything you believe in, you've taught me what real courage looks like. I love you, Ellen. I love Lily. Please say yes." Before Ellen could answer, Barbara burst into the theater. "Mark, your father, he's had a heart attack." The next hours were a blur. They rushed to the hospital where Richard Jonas lay pale and small in a hospital bed, machines beeping around him. Mark stood at the window, looking lost. "He was working late again," Barbara explained. "He just collapsed in his office. The doctors say it was stress." Ellen watched Mark's face crumple with guilt. Without a word, she took his hand and led him to the hospital chapel. "This isn't your fault," she said firmly. "I fought him, threatened him with the foundation documents. Maybe if I hadn't—" "Stop. Your father made his own choices, just like we all do." They sat in silence for a while, hands clasped together. Finally, Mark spoke. "When Rachel was sick, he never left her side. Not once. He slept in her hospital room, worked from a laptop balanced on his knees. After she died, he never was the same." Ellen squeezed his hand. "Then maybe this is a chance for both of you." Back in Richard's room, they found him awake, looking frail but alert, his eyes fixed on Ellen. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice weak. "Because your son needs me. And because no one should be alone in a hospital." Richard's face softened slightly. "Like your daughter?" "Yes, like Lily." A nurse came in to check Richard's vitals. "Family only after 8 p.m., she said pointedly to Ellen. To everyone's surprise, Richard spoke up. "She stays." Later that night, Ellen called Mrs. Rodriguez to check on Lily. "She's fine," Mrs. Rodriguez assured her. "She's been drawing pictures for Mr. Mark's daddy. Says everybody needs pretty pictures when they're sick." Ellen's heart swelled with love for her daughter. After hanging up, she found Mark in the hospital cafeteria, staring at a cold cup of coffee. "Move in with me," he said again. "Life's too short to let fear make our choices." This time Ellen didn't hesitate. "Yes?" Neither of them noticed Richard Jonas watching from his wheelchair in the hallway, a thoughtful look on his face. Nor did they see him motion to Barbara, who had been his faithful secretary for 2 decades. "Get me everything you can find about Ellen Davenport," he said. "Not the old reports, everything, her dancing background, her college scholarship, everything about the father of her child. I want to know who she really is." "Yes, sir," Barbara said, but she was smiling as she walked away. Back in the cafeteria, Ellen looked at her watch. "Rehearsal starts in an hour," she said. "Skip it," Mark suggested. "Stay here." Ellen shook her head. "No, the showcase is next week. Every minute counts." She stood up. "Your father wanted to see what I'm made of. Well, he's going to find out." She kissed Mark gently and headed for the theater. In less than a week, she would dance for everything. For Lily's future, for Mark's love, for her own dreams, and maybe, just maybe, for Richard Jonas's understanding. The stage waited, silent and dark. Ellen stepped into the spotlight and began to move. She danced for life, for love, for second chances. And somewhere in Memorial Hospital, a hard man's heart began to soften, just a little, as he looked at her. Child's crayon drawing of butterflies and hearts signed, "Get well soon." Love, Lily. Barbara knocked softly on Richard Jonas's hospital room door, carrying a thick folder. 3 days had passed since his heart attack, and the showcase was now just 4 days away. "Come in," Richard called, his voice stronger than it had been. He was sitting up in bed, looking at his laptop. "I found everything you asked for about Ellen Davenport," Barbara said, placing the folder on his tray table. "You might be surprised by what's in there." Richard opened the folder and began to read. His eyebrows rose higher with each page. "Full dance scholarship to the State Academy," he murmured. "Top of her class. Offers from 3 professional companies." He looked up at Barbara. "What happened?" "Keep reading," Barbara said quietly. Meanwhile, at the theater, Ellen was running through her solo piece one last time before picking up Lily from school. Mark watched from the front row, making notes for the lighting designer. "It's perfect," he said when she finished. "You're perfect." Ellen grabbed her towel, wiping sweat from her face. "Not yet, but it will be. It has to be." Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Rodriguez. "Lily not feeling well at school. They called." Ellen's heart stopped. She was halfway to the door when Mark caught up with her. "I'll drive you," he said, grabbing his keys. At the school nurse's office, they found Lily curled up on a cot, pale and tired. "My tummy hurts, Mommy," she whispered. Within an hour, they were at Memorial Hospital. Dr. Chen ordered tests while Ellen paced the waiting room. Mark held her hand tightly. "It's probably just a setback," he said. "The treatments were working." "Ms. Davenport?" Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway. "Can we talk privately?" Ellen squeezed Mark's hand. "No, he stays." In Dr. Chen's office, the doctor pulled up Lily's latest results on her computer. "The good news is, this isn't a rejection of the treatment," she said, "but her body is tired. The schedule we've been keeping, 3 treatments a week, it's very aggressive. I think we need to scale back." "For how long?" Ellen asked. "At least 2 weeks, maybe more. She needs rest." Ellen's heart sank. "The showcase is in 4 days. I know, and I know how important that is, but Lily needs her mother right now. She needs calm and quiet and rest." Back in the pediatric ward, they found Lily sleeping peacefully. The IV in her arm made her look so small, so fragile. "I'll cancel the showcase," Mark said. "We'll reschedule." "No." Ellen touched Lily's cheek, gently. "Your father is watching. If we cancel now, I don't care what he thinks anymore. But I do, because his opinion affects the foundation, affects other families who need help like we did." Ellen straightened her shoulders. "I'll make it work, somehow." A knock at the door made them turn. Richard Jonas stood there in a wheelchair, Barbara behind him. "May I come in?" he asked quietly. Ellen nodded, moving protectively closer to Lily's bed. Richard wheeled himself to the bedside, looking at the sleeping child. "I've been reading about you, Ms. Davenport," he said. "About the scholarship you gave up, the companies that wanted you. That was a long time ago." "Yes, right around when you got pregnant." He pulled a paper from the folder in his lap. "With Thomas Carter's child." Ellen went very still. Mark looked between them, confused. "Who's Thomas Carter?" he asked. "The son of one of our biggest competitors," Richard said. "A young man with a trust fund and a bad reputation. He got a 19-year-old scholarship student pregnant, then disappeared to Europe." He looked at Ellen. "Did he ever acknowledge Lily? Ever send support?" "No," Ellen said softly. "I never asked him to." "Why not? His family has money. You could have forced the issue." "Because I didn't want Lily to ever feel unwanted, like she was a burden someone was forced to pay for." Ellen's voice grew stronger. "She deserved better than that, better than him." Richard nodded slowly. "So you gave up your scholarship, your career, everything." "I gained everything," Ellen corrected him. "I gained Lily." Richard wheeled closer to the bed, looking at Lily's face. "She looks like Rachel at that age, the same kind of innocence." He turned to Ellen. "I've been unfair to you." "Yes, you have. When Mark started spending time with a dancer from that club, I assumed the worst. I thought you were like Thomas Carter, someone who would use our family, take advantage of our name." "I'm nothing like him," Ellen said firmly. "I never wanted anything except a chance to save my daughter." Richard pulled something else from his folder, the torn pieces of the foundation check, taped back together. "Take it," he said. "No strings attached. Use it for Lily's treatments." Ellen shook her head. "No, not like this. Let me earn it. Let me dance. Your daughter needs you here. I'll make it work. The showcase is only one night. Mrs. Rodriguez can stay with Lily. I'll perform, and then I'll come straight back." Richard studied her face. "You really won't take the easy way out, will you?" "There is no easy way out when you're a parent." You know that better than anyone. For the first time, Richard Jonas smiled. A real smile, not the cold one they were used to seeing. Yes, he said softly, I do know that. He looked at Mark. Your mother would have liked her. Mark put his arm around Ellen's shoulders. Mum always did have good taste. The showcase, Richard said. I'll be there, in the front row. Father, you just had a heart attack. I'm not missing it. Barbara's already arranged for a private nurse to accompany me. He turned back to Ellen. Show me what you can do, Miss Davenport. Show me why my son loves you. After Richard left, Ellen sank into the chair by Lily's bed, emotionally exhausted. I didn't know about Thomas Carter, Mark said quietly. It was a long time ago. I was young and stupid, and he was charming until he wasn't. Ellen touched Lily's hand. But look what I got in return. Look what his selfishness gave me. Lily stirred, opening her eyes. Mommy, can you tell me a story? Ellen smiled, brushing Lily's hair back. Once upon a time there was a dancer who thought she'd lost everything, but really, she was about to find everything she ever wanted. Outside the room, Richard Jonas sat in his wheelchair, listening to Ellen's voice telling the story. Ibarai stood behind him smiling. I think Rachel would have liked her too, she said softly. Richard nodded, touching the folder in his lap. A lifetime of judging people, of assuming the worst, of letting his grief turn him cold. Maybe it was time for that to change. The showcase was coming, and for the first time, he found himself hoping Ellen Davenport would succeed. The night before the showcase, Ellen couldn't sleep. She stood at the window of Mark's apartment, her new home now, watching the city lights twinkle. Everything they'd worked for would happen tomorrow. Her phone buzzed with a text from Regina. You need to see this. Turn on Channel 8 News. Ellen's hands shook as she found the remote. The late-night news was running a story about the showcase, but it wasn't the kind of publicity they wanted. Sources say the Jonas family's prestigious dance showcase has become embroiled in scandal, the reporter said. Questions have been raised about the leading dancer's past employment at a local nightclub. The story showed the photos Regina had taken, but also older ones. Ellen dancing in college, newspaper clippings about her scholarship, and then the biggest bombshell, a photo of her with Thomas Carter. The dancer in question, Ellen Davenport, was previously involved with Thomas Carter, heir to the Carter Industries fortune. Sources suggest this could be part of a corporate espionage attempt. Ellen turned off the TV, feeling sick. Her phone rang. Mark. I've already called our lawyers, he said without greeting. We'll sue them for defamation. It doesn't matter now, Ellen said quietly. The showcase is tomorrow. Everyone who matters will be there. Ellen, I have to go check on Lily. She found her daughter awake in her new bedroom, surrounded by the stuffed animals she'd helped her unpack just days ago. Mommy, why was our picture on TV? Ellen's heart broke. You saw that? Lily nodded. They showed the picture of me in the hospital and they said mean things about you. Her lower lip trembled. Are you still going to dance tomorrow? Ellen sat on the bed, pulling Lily into her arms. Do you remember what I always tell you about being brave? That brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing what's right, even when you are scared. That's right. And tomorrow I'm going to be brave for you, for us. A soft knock at the door made them look up. Richard Jonas stood there, leaning on a cane. The doctors said I should walk a little each day, he explained. Ellen quickly wiped her eyes. Did you see the news? I did. I also saw who leaked the story. His face was grim. Thomas Carter's father is trying to cause trouble. He's always been jealous of our family's success. Maybe we should cancel. Absolutely not. Richard's voice was firm. I didn't spend the last 3 days arguing with my doctors about attending just to see it cancelled. He looked at Lily. Besides, I believe this young lady has been practicing very hard to introduce the show. Lily's face lit up. In the days since Richard's heart attack, she'd become a regular visitor to his hospital room, bringing drawings and telling him stories. To everyone's surprise, the stern businessman had softened around her, even learning to play simple card games from his bed. I memorized all my lines, Grandpa Rich, Lily said proudly. Ellen's eyes filled with tears at the name. It was the first time Lily had called him that. Richard's hand trembled on his cane. Well then, he said gruffly, though his eyes were suspiciously bright. We can't disappoint our audience, can we? Just then, Mark appeared in the doorway. Father, you should be resting. I'm fine. Richard waved him off. But there is something we need to discuss, all of us. He pulled an envelope from his pocket, handing it to Ellen. What's this? She asked. Open it. Inside were adoption papers. Ellen's hands shook as she read them. "If you and Mark marry," Richard said quietly, "I want Lily to be officially part of our family. A Jonas, with all the protection and privileges. That comes with it." He looked at Lily. "If that's what she wants." "You mean," Lily's eyes were wide, "you'd really be my grandpa forever?" Richard nodded. "Forever." Lily launched herself at him, nearly knocking him over. Mark steadied his father as he hugged the little girl. "But the showcase," Ellen started. "Has nothing to do with this," Richard finished. "This is about family, about making things right." He set Lily down gently. "The papers are there when you're ready. No pressure, no timeline." After Richard went back to his room, Mark held Ellen close. "I didn't know he was planning this," he said. "Your father is full of surprises lately." Ellen looked at the papers again. "But the news story will be old news after tomorrow." Mark kissed her softly. "When you dance, no one will be able to deny who you really are." Later that night, Ellen went to the theater for one final rehearsal. The empty stage gleamed under the work lights. She touched the floor gently, remembering every step that had led her here. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Regina. "I know who leaked those photos to the Carter family," the message read. "It was me. I'm sorry. I was jealous. You got out, found something better. I don't know what I thought, but I'm going to fix it." A few minutes later, Regina sent another message. "Check your email. I sent you something." Ellen found an email with attachments, screenshots of text messages between Regina and Carter Industries' PR team, proving they had orchestrated the whole scandal. There was also a signed confession from Regina, taking full responsibility. "Use it however you want," Regina's final message said. "You deserve your happy ending." Ellen sat on the edge of the stage, overwhelmed. Tomorrow she would dance for everything. For Lily's future, for Mark's love, for Richard's acceptance, and maybe even for Regina's redemption. Her phone buzzed one last time. A message from Dr. Chen. "Lily's latest blood work came in. The numbers are stabilizing. Whatever you're doing, it's working. She's going to be okay." Ellen stood up, wiping her eyes. She walked to center stage and raised her arms in the opening pose of her solo. The work lights hummed overhead. Tomorrow, those lights would be filled with color and magic. Tomorrow, she would tell her story through dance. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, in the quiet theater, Ellen Davenport danced for herself. For the girl who gave up her scholarship, but found something better. For the mother who never gave up. For the woman who learned that love could come in unexpected ways. She danced until the night guard gently told her it was time to go home. Home. To her daughter. To Mark. To their future. Tomorrow was waiting. And Ellen was ready. The Hamilton Theatre buzzed with excitement. Every seat was filled and the air crackled with anticipation. Backstage, Ellen peeked through the curtain. In the front row, she saw Richard Jonas in his wheelchair with a nurse. Beside him, Mark sat next to his father, handsome in a dark suit. 5 minutes to curtain, the stage manager called. Ellen knelt down to Lily's level, adjusting her little blue dress. Her daughter would introduce the show, Richard's idea, and one that had filled Lily with excitement. "Remember your lines, baby?" Lily nodded. "I'm not scared, Mommy. Grandpa Rich says Jonas girls are never scared." Ellen's heart swelled. In the past week, Richard had become the grandfather Lily never had. They played cards in his room every day after her treatments, and he always had a new stuffed animal waiting for her. The stage manager appeared. "It's time." Ellen kissed Lily's forehead. "Show them what you've got, baby." The house lights dimmed. A single spotlight hit the stage. As Lily walked out, her step steady and sure, the audience murmured they hadn't expected a child. "My mommy always says that love is like dancing," Lily began, her voice clear and strong. "Sometimes it's hard, and sometimes you stumble, but if you keep going, something beautiful happens." She smiled at the audience. "Tonight, my mommy is going. To dance for love, for hope, for family. Please welcome the Jonas Family Foundation Dance Showcase." The audience burst into applause. As Lily walked off stage, Ellen caught her in a tight hug. "Perfect," she whispered. The show began. The other dancers performed their pieces flawlessly, but everyone was waiting for the finale, Ellen's solo. As she waited in the wings, she felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Regina. "I brought someone," Regina said softly, stepping aside. Thomas Carter stood there, looking older but still handsome in an expensive suit. "What are you doing here?" Ellen asked, her voice cold. "My father told me about the news story, about using our old photos." He looked ashamed. "I came to apologize. For everything. for leaving you alone back then. I wasn't alone. I had Lily. Yes, you did. He smiled, sadly. You chose better than I did, Ellen. I've spent years regretting what I threw away. Why tell me this now? Because you deserve to know that what happened wasn't your fault. You were always the strong one, the brave one. He handed her an envelope. This is for Lily, a trust fund. No strings attached. She is my daughter, after all. Ellen handed the envelope back. No, she's not. She's a Jonas now. Or she will be. She touched the adoption papers in her dressing room. Some men earn the right to be called father. You never did. Thomas nodded slowly. I understand. Just be happy, Ellen. You deserve it. As he walked away, Regina squeezed Ellen's hand. I'll make sure he leaves quietly. Regina, Ellen called after her. Thank you for making things right. The stage manager appeared. Places. For the finale. Ellen took her position in the darkness. The music began, soft at first, then building. The spotlight found her and she began to move. She danced the story of her life. The young girl with dreams. The mother's sacrifice. The long nights of worry and work. The unexpected love that changed everything. Her body spoke what words could never express. In the front row, Richard Jonas gripped his son's hand. Mark wiped tears from his eyes. And little Lily watched from the wings, her face glowing with pride. As the music reached its crescendo, Ellen's movements became more powerful, more triumphant. This wasn't just a dance about survival anymore. It was a dance about victory, about family, about love conquering all. The final note rang out. Ellen stood center stage, arms raised, tears streaming down her face. For a moment there was complete silence. Then the audience exploded. They rose to their feet, applauding and cheering. Flowers rained onto the stage. Even the critics in attendance were standing, shouting, "Bravo!" Lily ran onto the stage, throwing herself into Ellen's arms. Mark followed, lifting them both in a huge hug. And then, slowly, supported by his nurse and his cane, Richard Jonas made his way up the steps to the stage. He faced the audience, raising his hands for quiet. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice rang out, "tonight we witnessed more than just a dance performance. We witnessed the power of love, of family, of never giving up." He turned to Ellen. "Ms. Davenport, Ellen, welcome to the Jonas family." The audience cheered again. Mark got down on one knee, pulling out a ring. "I was going to wait," he said, "but Dad stole my thunder. Ellen Davenport, will you marry me?" "Yes," Ellen whispered. "Yes." Lily jumped up and down. "Does this mean I get to be a flower girl?" Everyone laughed. Richard pulled out the adoption papers already signed by him. "It means you get to be a Jonas," he said, "if that's what you and your mother want." Ellen looked at her daughter, her fiancé, and the man who had become a true father figure. She thought of the long journey that had brought her here, the nights of despair, the days of struggle, and now this moment of pure joy. "It's what we want," she said. "It's all we've ever wanted, a family." 6 months later, Ellen danced again at the Hamilton Theatre. This time she wore a white dress, and Mark waited for her at the end of the aisle. Lily scattered rose petals in front of her, wearing a matching dress and a huge smile. Richard Jonas, stronger now, but still using a cane, walked Ellen down the aisle. "Ready, my dear?" he asked. Ellen looked ahead at her future husband, at her daughter, at the life she never dreamed she'd have. "Ready," she said. And she was. Ready for love, ready for family, ready for happily ever after. Because sometimes life's greatest dances aren't performed on a stage. They're lived in the heart, where hope never dies and love never gives up. 1 year later, the Jonas Family Foundation Dance Academy opened its doors. Its mission? To provide dance training and medical care to children in need. And every year Ellen Jonas taught a special class, reminding her students that with enough love, enough hope, and enough determination, any dream was possible. Because she knew, better than anyone, that life's most beautiful dances are the ones we dance for love. The end.